Welcome to meeting number 115 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Agriculture and Agri-Food. Colleagues, you've been through this song and dance before, so I don't need to go through the reminders, but I will say for the health of our translators, let's make sure our earpieces are away from our microphones, please and thank you. Premièrement, pour tous mes collègues, mais particulièrement Monsieur.
First of all, a message to all of my colleagues, especially Mr. Perron. I want to acknowledge something. We've done all of the sound tests for our witnesses, but also our colleagues who are online. I'd also like to welcome Ms. Brière, Mr. McGregor, and Mr. Epp, who are subbing for other people or who are here for the first time at this committee.
I just want to recognize we're going to move quickly. We're a little bit behind based on the votes, so I will be trying to move quickly. I think we'll probably try to do one round of questions and maybe a bit of a half process on the second one if we could. So without further ado, I'm going to say, I don't know if I have my piece here on, oh, here it is. Here it is, it's on this back, or that one. Okay, pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on Thursday, October 24th, the committee is commencing essentially a one-session study on the priorities for the agriculture sector in relation to the Fall Economic Statement. With us today, we have the Canadian Canola Growers Association, Dave Carey and Gail McLaughlin, no strangers to this committee. Welcome back before us. From the Canadian Cattle Association, Tyler Fulton, Vice President, Jennifer Babcock, Senior Director of Government and Public Affairs. Welcome back to you two both. From CropLife Canada, Gregory Coles, Vice President, Government Affairs, and Emily Bergeron, Vice President of Chemistry. Welcome back and thank you for your work. And last but not least, Fruit and Vegetable Growers of Canada, Massimo Bergamini, who is the Executive Director. So welcome, and you guys are all here in the room, so it's great to have everyone back before us. 5 minutes at most for opening statements. I'm normally quite liberal. But today I'll be a little conservative. I know my Tories will like that. But anyways, 5 minutes. I'm going to start with the Canadian Canola Growers Association. Over to you.
Invitation. Thank you for the invitation to appear today. I'll be sharing my time with my colleague Gail. CCJ represents Canada's 40,000 canola farmers and any issues that impact their on-farm profitability. With offices in Winnipeg and Ottawa, CCJ is also the largest administrator of the Advanced Payments Program. The canola sector contributes $43.7 billion a year to the Canadian economy, provides for 206,000 jobs, and exports were valued at $15.8 billion in 2023. Canola is also one of the top-earning commodities for farmers in 2023, with $13.7 billion in farm cash receipts. Canola farmers face both opportunities and challenges. We've broken down our opening remarks into 5 recommendations. 1, transportation labor. 90% of canola grown in Canada is destined for export. Rail is the only practical means to move canola from areas of production to export position. In Canada, we have 2 Class 1 railways which operate effectively as geographic monopolies. In the short term, we ask that the extended interswitching pilot introduced in Budget 2023 be expanded to a 500-kilometre radial distance and extended a further 30 months with the path to permanency. This is to account for the grain industry's seasonality and contracting timelines, giving more businesses a chance to participate and providing an accurate data set for the pilot's evaluation. Taking this action will cost the federal government no money. In the longer term, we do need to address the frequent and now perennial labour disruptions we see at Canada's ports and with our railways. According to the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, 2023 saw the most days lost due to labour disruption since 1986. Our second ask would be to pass Bill C-234. As co-chair of the Agriculture Carbon Alliance, a coalition of 16 national farm groups, we were disappointed to see the Senate amend Bill C-234. That being said, the amended bill does provide relief to farmers and ranchers through exemptions for grain drying, irrigation, and feed preparation, for which there are no viable alternatives. CCJ would like to see Bill C-234 pass at the next opportunity. Over to you, Gail.
Thanks, Dave. In regards to trade, the 2026 review of the CUSMA looms large for our farmers. The U.S. is our largest, and Mexico is our 3rd largest export market, with exports valued at $8.6 billion for the former and $1 billion for the latter in 2023. We have now heard clearly from both U.S. presidential candidates that they view 2026 as a renegotiation, not a review. Given the context and a new administration in Mexico, Canada should be prioritizing this agreement and ensuring we do nothing domestically to antagonize this critical relationship. CCGA was Washington, D.C. last week for the 33rd Tri-National Agriculture Accord and heard loudly that Bill C-282 will cause damage to our trading relationships and CUSMA review, in particular with the U.S. The CUSMA region will be even more important for our farmers, given the significant trade challenges we will face with canola seed into China, given our government's action on EVs and other imports. We exported $5 billion worth of canola to China in 2023. 4, in regards to Bill C-59, our sector needs clarity around this bill. Canadian farmers are amongst the most sustainable in the world, and part of our global competitiveness is being able to tell our story to a global audience. The intended and unintended consequences of the greenwashing provisions and the very low threshold for bringing forth a complaint raise serious concerns amongst farmers. Finally, number 5, regarding business risk management. These tools are important to farmers and provide them with support when they face significant production or income losses. The risk profiles and priorities of today's farmers have changed compared to 20 years ago when the basic design of these programs began. Closer collaboration with farmers and their associations are needed to ensure they meet the needs of farmers now and into the future. Thank you.
I like the efficiency. Thank you very much. We'll now turn over to, I think next on my schedule, Canadian Cattle Association. So over to you folks.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of Parliament. I'm Tyler Fulton, and I'm a beef producer from Manitoba, and I currently serve as the Vice President of the Canadian Cattle Association, or CCA. We're pleased to join you today to discuss our top priorities, particularly in advance of the Fall Economic Statement. CCA's recommendations come with either low or no cost to government. However, they are high impact for Canada's beef sector and are key to our global competitiveness, growth, and continued environmental stewardship. The focus of my remarks will be on livestock price insurance, or LPI for short. For those that aren't familiar, LPI offers price, currency, and basis risk protection for all classes of cattle and market hogs. Cattle producers, regardless of the size of their farm or ranch, can ensure a forward price for their cattle. LPI is the only program that allows producers to proactively manage their price risk and is particularly important for the cow-calf sector. Given the volatility of livestock markets, managing risk is critically important to producers' long-term sustainability. This past year, the Maritime provinces came on board to offer LPI to their provincial producers. This is critical if we're going to grow the herd across Canada. Now that LPI is offered in 7 provinces, we're recommending the government introduce cost-shared premiums. This includes a 60-40 cost-shared premium that is equal to the crop insurance program. Given a 60% premium support level and assuming a 5-fold increase in producer participation, the federal-provincial government's combined annual cost would be approximately $70 million. That's $42 million for the federal portion. This amount would offset agri-stability payments because more producers would have been proactively managing this risk and reduce the need for agri-recovery dollars in addressing market disruptions. Cattle producers face significant inequities compared to other agricultural commodities, jeopardizing both our economic viability and our capacity to deliver environmental benefits unique to cattle production. For example, guaranteed returns through crop insurance with cost-share premiums incentivizes producers to convert valuable pasture land into cropland, directly impacting grassland ecosystems and the vital environmental services that they provide. Without a more balanced approach, Canada risks losing valuable pasture land and the long-term sustainability of our beef sector. Between 2011 and 2021, 2.7 million acres of grassland and tame pasture were converted to crop production, resulting in significant declines in biodiversity, carbon sequestration, and water management offered through grazing. Federal and provincial governments, while remaining supportive, have expressed concern about LPI's long-term viability given limited uptake. In the United States, the USDA faced a similar challenge with its livestock risk protection program. However, participation rates grew substantially when premium subsidies were introduced in 2020. Now, a substantial percentage of U.S. cattle production is insured and protected under their program. Providing equitable support to offset costs would place the program on a strong foundation and level the playing field. In addition to LPI, we continue to face regulatory burdens due to bovine spongiform encephalopathy, even though Canada obtained its BSE negligible risk status in 2021. To fully capitalize on this status, the beef industry, in close collaboration with the CFIA, commissioned a quantitative risk assessment to evaluate the harmonization of Canada's specified risk material, or SRM, requirements with those of the United States. Thus, the CCA recommends that government utilize the robust scientific and economic study to expediently align SRM removal requirements in Canada with those U.S. regulations. Differences between Canada and the U.S. on SRM regulations cost the industry approximately $24 million annually, making our industry less competitive. It should be noted that recent studies have shown our current SRM policy is the most significant barrier to investment in new small and medium-sized cattle processing facilities. The SRM report is very near to completion, and we urge the government to commence policy and regulatory changes swiftly and ensure they're included in the government's regulatory priorities. Thank you for your time. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Fulton. Just one quick note of clarification. You mentioned the SRM report. Is that's being conducted by CFIA? Is that what I heard in your testimony?
No, as a matter of fact, it was commissioned by contractors, but in line with CFIA requirements. Understanding that there's a big science component to the risk analysis, and so we had to make sure that the report was going to be meaningful.
Okay, thank you. No, I think it's a really important recommendation and one that this committee should urge and push the government to do. I now have from CropLife Canada over to you, Mr. Coles, perhaps.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and honourable members. My name is Greg Coles, and I am Vice President, Government Affairs at CropLife Canada. And joining me today is Émilie Bergeron, Vice President, Chemistry. Thank you very much for inviting us to discuss the priorities of Canada's agriculture sector. CropLife Canada is the national trade association representing the manufacturers, developers, and distributors of pesticides and plant breeding innovations. We advocate for a predictable, science-based regulatory environment for plant science innovations in Canada. Furthermore, we champion a regulatory environment that both protects human and environmental safety while encouraging innovation and competitiveness. In a recent report, the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, warns that global hunger and food insecurity are at critical levels. Hundreds of millions of people lack access to nutritious, safe, and sufficient food amid world conflicts, climate change, supply chain disruptions, and economic shocks, which have all contributed to high food inflation. That said, feeding Canadians and the world will require plant science innovations. Whether it's higher yielding crops, varieties that are more resilient in the face of environmental stressors, or new crop protection tools, these are all innovations that will support Canadian farmers in their important quest to address food insecurity. Using less land and fewer resources while achieving higher yields, which is enabled by these innovations, also makes food more affordable, reducing the average household Canadian grocery bill by about $4,500 a year. This is why we are urging the Government of Canada to take bold action to enable the Canadian agriculture sector to help address the food security crisis, both domestically and abroad. So, how can we unleash the full potential of Canada's ag sector and conquer food insecurity? Well, it begins by cutting red tape and creating a high-efficiency regulatory environment in Canada that will enable our agriculture sector to thrive. The OECD currently has Canada ranked 35th out of 38 member countries in terms of regulatory burden. This is unacceptable. This massive gap is a fundamental roadblock for agriculture innovation, sustainability, and production. In recent years, Canadian farmers have seen considerable delays in the introduction of agriculture technologies and access to safe and effective crop protection products due to a lack of predictability and timeliness in the domestic regulatory system. These barriers to innovation are hindering Canadian growers' productivity and competitiveness. Simply put, the Government of Canada must ensure our growers have access to the tools and technologies they need when they need them. Let's focus specifically on Canada's Pesticide Management Regulatory Agency, the PMRA. Over the last several years, we've witnessed the PMRA being seized by a so-called transformation agenda, bureaucratic processes and initiatives that continue to add red tape to the regulatory process and dissuade investment and in innovation in Canada.
Since 2021, product approval timelines have slipped, and Canada's reputation as a place with timely and predictable decision-making has dropped, largely due to this politically motivated transformation process. We believe the time has come to redirect transformation agenda funding to core scientific activities and revisit Health Canada proposed cost recovery scheme, a 256% increase on fees for a more effective, efficient, and accountable approach. Let's be clear, we're not here today questioning the scientific capability or integrity of PMRA scientists or PMRA as a regulator. We're advocating for an approach that recognizes the key role PMRA can play and should play in helping farmers cope with real and significant challenges that can affect food production and the overall sustainability of Canadian ag sector, while maintaining strong health and environmental protections. Therefore, we recommend that a comprehensive review of the PMRA program and activities be undertaken with a view to eliminate all activities that are not directly linked to meeting their health and environmental safety mandate and support the competitiveness of the agricultural sector. In conclusion, CropLife Canada asserts that the Government of Canada has an opportunity and, in fact, a responsibility to recognize the critical role agriculture plays as an economic engine in this country and provide the support needed to unleash the sector's full potential. At a time when Canada overall productivity continues to decline, we are urging the federal government to identify agriculture and agri-food as a key economic growth sector and take a whole-of-government approach to implementing policies that promote long-term growth for the industry. We aren't coming here to you with a cap in hand asking for more money. Instead, we believe the Government of Canada must seize the opportunity to rebuild Canada's reputation as a top destination for investment in innovation by reducing red tape and creating a high-efficiency regulatory environment while maintaining strong health and environmental protection. Thank you once again for inviting us today. We look forward to answering any question you have.
Thank you so much. Over to Mr. Bergamini, s'il vous plaît.
Thank you. Bonjour, Monsieur le Président.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Massimo Bergamini, and I am the Executive Director of Fruit and Vegetable Growers of Canada. Our organization represents producers across the country. Our members participate in the production of more than 120 types of different crops in more than 14,000 farms. So thank you to the committee for allowing me the opportunity to participate.
I may not yet have a detailed sense of every issue or policy framework affecting our sector, but 6 weeks in, I do have a sense of what keeps our members up at night. Climate change and extreme weather, chronic labor shortages, the threat of growing protectionism, and a widening competitive divide immediately come to mind. Last August, our organization provided 2 comprehensive briefs to the government in the context of its pre-budget consultations. Copies in both official languages have been provided to the clerk of the committee as a complement to this presentation. These 2 submissions, which included a sector-specific look at Canada's greenhouse industry and the challenges it faces, contain some 42 specific recommendations covering everything from business risk management to crop protection to energy and climate change to labor and trade. I will not repeat them here. What I will do, however, is take a moment to focus on this committee's important report, Improving the Resilience of Canada's Horticultural Sector. Would I say that your report addresses every issue, every concern? Probably not. What it does do, however, is provide a realistic policy roadmap to sustainability for Canada's diverse horticultural sector. This is why we view your report's recommendation as nothing less than the necessary starting point for any effort to improve the resiliency of Canada's horticultural sector. Let's look at some of the top-line examples. 1, your report correctly identifies problems with the current suite of business risk management programs and recommends an urgent review before they expire in 4 years. 2, it proposes simple and pragmatic measures to address the most glaring issues with Canada's Temporary Foreign Workers Program. 3, It recognizes the unique risk profile and competitive imbalance faced by Canadian horticultural producers, notably by recommending the adoption of Bill C-280, which would finally mainstream bankruptcy protection for our sector. If your work collectively in this committee and individually as champions within your respective caucuses resulted in real movement on just those three policy areas, it would go a long way to bolstering our sector and improving food security for all Canadians. I say this because too often the good work and important work done in committees of the House and of the Senate remains dead letter. We want your report to inspire and inform urgent government action, and we will work with you to ensure that a light continues to shine on it. Having said that, I do want to leave you with an additional thought, and while some may dismiss this as being too technical, too processy, or too inside baseball, we believe it must be given serious consideration. And I'm talking here about adopting a food lens for all policy development in Canada. As you know, from gender-based analysis to equity and climate change, the Government of Canada is no stranger to the development of public policy through dedicated policy prisms. While each of these lenses speaks to important policy considerations, few things are more fundamental to the well-being of individuals, of families, of communities, and of nations than food security. Applying a food lens to policy development would mean having the Government of Canada elevate food security as a national priority. In its simplest form, as we see it, it would mean recognizing that all key policy initiatives should answer a very straightforward question. Will this policy enhance or reduce the quantity, quality, and diversity of domestic food production? Adopting a food lens to policy development, if done in a transparent manner with clear accountabilities, we believe would change everything. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, just while I have the floor, two budgets that we need to get passed quickly that I know you've reviewed and I know will have your support. That is around intergenerational transfer, our upcoming meeting and study, and also the priorities of agriculture that we're studying right now. So seeing hands up. The other piece is, it was mentioned by Mr. Bergamini in relation to C-280. I've had the opportunity, I understand, Mr. Barlow, when you were in the chair last week, this came up around the letters. With your approval, I'm going to send the letter C-280 off right away. I think we have to have a more in-depth conversation, obviously, on some of the correspondence that I've received, so we'll do that at another place. But 280 is going out the door today unless I have any strong opposition. Seeing none, let's turn it over to questions. I presume Mr. Barlow for 6 minutes. Probably only one round, colleagues.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'll try and ask for indulgence from my witnesses to answer the questions as quickly as possible. So I do want to leave a little bit of time for one of my colleagues. And Mr. Beragimi, I think you said something we're all thinking, is it's important that we elevate the importance of agriculture in Canada. And it's unfortunate, even Ms. Bergeron, you mentioned that we need to rebuild our reputation. I don't know why our reputation has been ruined over the last 10 years by, I would argue, very poor government policy that's painted agriculture in a poor light. But you mentioned in your opening statement about the concerns with PMRA's revitalization, let's say, or recovery policy. And it's my understanding that Health Canada's increased registration fees on plant protection products, the increase is 256%. Can you maybe quickly elaborate the impact this will have on the industry in Canada?
Yes, thank you very much for the question. Yes, so PMRA is proposing to increase by 256% the fees that registrant pays for maintaining their plant protection products in Canada. So that will have a huge impact on access to innovation and competitiveness of the of our agricultural sector. First of all, this will place us like the fees in Canada about 7 to 10 times higher than the fees that my members in the U.S. are paying for the same type of products that they're maintaining in the market, for a Canadian market that is about 10 times smaller than the U.S. market. So a significant competitive disadvantage for Canada if that proposal were going ahead. So the PMRA is planning to go to a CG1 process with this proposal later in the fall. We're quite concerned that they haven't really consulted the sector following the public consultation that took place back in the spring. We believe and agree with PMRA that the fee structure needs to be updated, and it needs to be updated for a long time. We've made constructive proposal to the PMRA that we ask them to discuss further. We believe that our proposal will let them achieve their financial goals, so getting the money they need to ensure the long-term stability of their program and making sure we get innovations in the hands of grower, but without impacting the competitiveness of the sector. Unfortunately, we haven't been consulted further on this.
Thank you for that. And just really quickly, a yes or no, have they given you any assurances that these massive increases in fees, which are going to have a pretty negative impact on our competitiveness and with farmers, any better service or any economic lens that's going to be applied to PMRA decisions?
No. Whoops. No.
No, that's good enough. That's all I needed to know.
No assurances.
So I just wanted to turn to the Canadian Cattle Association. You were talking about the importance of the livestock protection or price protection program. What would be the impact in terms of, we've seen the latest report that our herd numbers are as lower since 1987, pre-BSE even. What would be the impact in terms of growing the herd in Canada if we were to implement this program nationally?
It's our belief that's probably the single biggest impact that we could have to reverse the trend of a shrinking herd and encourage the young producers to come back. That's the critical issue there is you referenced the intergenerational farm transfer issue. We've gone a generation since BSE, and quite simply, we lost them because the profits and risk was too high. Risk management is critical in attracting those young producers back to our industry so that they can rationalize the investments, the huge investments that they need to make. So we see this as being probably the top priority that would actually encourage the industry to grow again.
Thank you. I'm just going to leave my remaining time to Ms. Rood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Bergimi, I'd like to start with you, please. I've heard from many people in my own riding and coming from a produce farming background and being a third generation who's looking at the intergenerational transfers of land right now. I'm just wondering if you could tell us how the increase to the capital gains is going to affect our produce farms specifically, because we know the land values are a lot more than some land values of other commodities. And what I'm hearing is that there are farms that are now in jeopardy, and this is going to shut down the family farm.
Unfortunately, your question falls under the rubric of those issues that I have not had a chance to deal with over the last 6 weeks. But I certainly understand the importance of it. Having grown up on a fresh vegetable farm myself, I will discuss this with our membership, and I will get you an answer that we'll share with the entire committee.
Thank you. What about to Mr. Carey? Do you have a quick comment on that, or Ms. McLaughlin?
Sure, I'm happy to answer for you, Ms. Rood. Yes, it is of great concern for our canola farmers as well. Certainly, as I said in my remarks, land prices are going up. Inputs, generally, broadly speaking, over years have been going up as well. And so this is just creating extra strain and stress on young farmers, in particular, our new farmers entering the sector. And so we believe this kind of essentially moves the goalposts for not only farmers who are retiring, but also farmers entering into farming, and concerns that this will just increase costs for them at a time where costs are already rising.
Thank you.
Time. Thank you. I'll now turn to Mr. Drouin, please. You might be splitting with Ms. Murray, I understand, but up to 6 minutes. Oh, we're having some issues there. You might be on mute, my friend, from Glengarry Puscott. I'm being told if you can unplug your headset, Mr. Drouin, and replug it in. Not working, Mr. Drouin. We might have to see to Miss Murray if she wants to go ahead. You try. We'll give you a few more seconds to try to get. Yeah, okay. We'll go to. I'll tell you what. We'll go to Yves. We'll give him a precedent, and then we'll turn back to our Liberal colleagues. Maintenant, 6 minutes, s'il vous plaît, monsieur.
6 minutes, please. So we're going ahead of the government. Who knows what the future holds for us? Thank you to the witnesses for being here today. I do have some questions to ask. I will start with Mr. Bergamini. Sorry, not Bergamini, but Bergamini. Welcome to this new position. You've been talking about reviewing risk management before 2028. All committee members will agree with me. We've been talking about this for a while. What's going on? Is the government talking to you? What's going on? Has it been quite silent? And are they going to start telling you to work in the last 3 months of 2027 and everything will be delayed? What's going to happen? On our end, we haven't had any indication that a revision or a review process is in process. In your studies, I think you have pinpointed the issue. These are programs that were safety nets. They are not adapted to the current reality. And this reality is constantly changing, and that's something that we need to keep stock of. The reality 20 years ago does not hold up today. We will have to put in and implement structures and measures that will require constant revision. That's why we need to emphasize an analysis style that prioritizes agriculture.
And we move on.
Thank you very much. I'd like to go quickly. There's a lot of you and we don't have much time. With regards to cattle, Mr. Fulton, when you talk about various things, for example, the specified risk material, I just feel like we're going around in circles. Or, for example, when we're talking about BSA, we've had multiple recommendations to review the standards in place, and you're asking us to do that yet again. So what I'm hearing is that there's no evaluation, nothing being done right now in order to review that standard. Is that what you're saying?
No, to be clear, there is now a new risk assessment that is not, its public release is imminent, but not yet. And so what we hope is that the government will take the results of that and immediately reflect it in the regulations going forward.
Je veux bien vous comprendre, vous dites qu'il y a une analyse de risque.
So if I understand correctly, you're saying that there's risk analysis that's being done, but the government has not taken the imperative on that. But you'd like them to do that. Is that correct? To take the initiative?
Yes, absolutely.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. On to the canola growers. Mr. Carey, you talked about interconnectedness. You asked for that measure to be prolonged by 30 months. You said that these are not easy measures to put in place, and you said that there is a pilot project. So you said you'd like to see this go on for an extra 30 months and then make it permanent. 2 questions. 1, why don't we just make it permanent now? Because the pilot project has already started. And is the 60 kilometers, is that enough? Because I've heard 500 kilometers. Railway companies will incur fees. I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Extension. Right now, the pilot expires at the end of March 2025. That's a cliff. There's no, at this point, ability to prolong that, so shippers are very reluctant to use interswitching for the threat of retaliation from our 2 Class 1 railways. We're asking for a 30-month extension, which would give us 48 months of data that also lines up with the statutory review of the Canadian Transportation Act, and we're asking for 500 kilometers because 160 kilometers does not allow the Peace region of Northern Alberta have no access, they have no competition, and that right now the pilot is only in the prairies. And it is a no cost for government to do. It is simply a regulatory change.
OK, puis le 160 km.
So for the 160 kilometers, you think that that's sufficient?
We're asking 500.
OK. Merci beaucoup. Madame?
Thank you very much. Ms. Bergeron, you talked about facilitating regulation, making it more pragmatic, science-based. Of course, we agree. Of course, that would require transparency. I know that your organization, of course, is a big proponent of transparency, even though we might have some differences on that. With regards to that registry, don't you think it would be better if the government had that registry? It would require less of your organization, and it would ensure transparency towards the public. In 30 seconds, please, very briefly.
Merci pour la question.
Thank you for the question. In this case, I believe my colleague Ian understands a lot more than myself and Emilie do, and so we will get back to you with an answer soon.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
For a follow-up from CCA, because again, I think this specified risk material, it does matter. It's on competitiveness. As I understand it, Mr. Fulton, once this scientific report is released publicly, that would then justify the regulatory change that your organization is seeking. And I think it would be helpful for this committee to kind of know what that regulatory process looks like. And maybe we don't have the time to get into all the nuts and bolts of it, but the more that we have that roadmap, I think it'll allow us all to advocate strongly in your corner. Mr. McGregor, for up to 6 minutes. No, Mr. Drouin's still in, I don't know where he's at, so I'm going to go to you for 6 minutes. Don't worry, my good Liberal colleagues will get their chance.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Welcome back. It's good to see all of you again, and thanks for coming here to outline your priorities. Mr. Kerry, I'd like to turn to you. So in your opening statement, I did hear you mention Bill C-234, and you know, I've certainly committed on behalf of my party to honor our third reading vote at the House of Commons. So if the bill does ever come back for a vote, we would vote to reject the Senate amendments. But did I hear you correctly that you're prepared to accept, like, even a part of the bill would be better than nothing at all at this moment?
For our 40,000 farmers, of course, the unamended bill is what passed the House of Commons, what went through this committee. That is what we would like to see. However, given the Senate amendments and the uncertainty in the Senate, we, as the canola growers, we are asking for the amended bill to be passed, because even if the House of Commons rejected those amendments, it would go back to the Senate, and all indications are that it would be further amended at third reading by the Senate, and we'd end up in a protracted game of ping pong between the two chambers. So farmers need the relief now. It's been challenging with the capital gains changes, with a number of other issues, labor issues. So canola growers are supportive of moving the amended bill forward as soon as is possible in the parliamentary schedule.
Okay, so if parliamentarians could stop speaking to the bill and we could come to a vote, that would be a good thing for you.
The sooner the bill is passed, and then we have to work on with CRA implementation. That's not an easy hurdle to deal with CRA post-implementation royal assent, but that would be our ask of parliamentarians, yes.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for clarifying that. And with respect to interswitching, I get the comments that, like, I guess with the short timeline that you have had and the shorter distance, it's been hard to get a complete holistic picture of data. I guess from the regions where you have been able to collect, can you report anything back? Like, what's it been like so far?
Even at the peak of interswitching, between 2014 to 2017, only 1% of grain was moved through it. It's typically the canola processors are big movers of it. It's a corporate negotiation strategy, so that a shipper can say to one Class 1 railway, we need 500 grain cars this week. That railway says we can only send 300. You can then call the other Class 1 railway and say, we need 500. How close can you get? Because of the duration of the pilot being only 18 months with no path to permanency or horizon for an extension at this point, many shippers are scared to use it for fear of retaliation from the Class 1 railways post the expiration of interswitching. Again, it is a negotiation tool. It's not something that is typically used a lot, but it provides the only way that we have geographic monopolies that at the best of times operate as a duopoly. It's the only way that our shippers can say, in the worst case scenario for farmers, if a grain elevator or processor gets full, they can't deliver their grain, even if they have a contract, and then they can't pay their bills. And increasingly we're seeing in your neck of the woods, all the anchorage and demurrage we're seeing from vessels is a result of a poor grain car fulfillment from railways. 80% is good for us. CN's been pretty good post-labor action. CPKC is still in the 70s of 70% of grain car fulfillment. So when those ships anchor, those demurrage costs up to $15,000 a day get passed on through the value chain, and then they have to go back to sea, and they cause Vancouver Island residents heartache, et cetera. So it's a significant issue, and it affects our global reputation as an on-time, reliable trading partner.
Yes, that is still a very hot topic for my constituents. I'd like to turn to the Canadian Cattle Association. Mr. Fulton and Ms. Babcock, welcome back. I heard your opening comments about the encroachment of croplands on degrazing land, but I also wanted to focus about the tremendous efforts that you've done in working with organizations like the Nature Conservancy of Canada and showing how a well-managed symbiotic relationship between large herbivores and Canada's traditional grasslands actually, can really intensify the ecological health of the area. Do you feel like government policy is giving enough recognition for those types of efforts, that the types of measures you're putting into place to preserve Canada's traditional grasslands?
So no, we've advocated really fairly consistently definitely over the last 5 years to get recognition, to really address the grassland loss that happens largely from conversion to cropland. And as I relayed in my statement, we think a big part of that is simply the incentives that crop insurance provides within that program to roll the dice and try growing canola, for example, on marginal land that wouldn't otherwise really be able to support it. I grow both, beef cattle and canola, and when there's a program in place that favors one over another, it's going to influence my decisions on it. And really, the hope is that we can level the playing field so that the market decides what the best use of that land is, and hopefully get some the market can reflect the value of that pasture in nature.
And finally, just one further comment. Do you have anything to add? I know this committee in previous years, especially after the pandemic, was looking at Canada's processing capacity. Any comments you want to do on Canada's current state? Anything the government needs to look at?
To really just lock down what I was saying earlier, square one is getting these SRM regulations matched with the U.S. Without that, we cannot attract the investment that we need into our sector in order to grow that processing sector, which is critical. And in particular, for the small and medium packers, of which I have friends that have expressed, a concern or a desire to grow, but concerns that they can't compete.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McGregor. Thank you, Mr. Fulton. We're going to go to Ms. Murray online. I understand Mr. Drouin's still not able to join us, but I know we'll be in capable hands with you. So over to you, Ms. Murray.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and welcome to all the witnesses. Thank you for being here and for sharing with us the information about your members' priorities, which is, of course, very helpful to government. I was listening to hear any of the priorities that linked into our previous discussions on carbon border adjustment and preparing to help defend Canada's agriculture sector in the context of that potential, which we know is not for sure, and we know that the sector is not thrilled about the idea, but preparing for that also means reducing greenhouse gas emissions out of Canada's agriculture sector. So I'm interested for the cattle industry, for example. I mean, I totally understand why livestock price insurance would be a top priority. I'd love to hear what the industry is doing to reduce methane releases and the very potent greenhouse gas emission that is. The crop science, plant science innovations also, I'm sure there are innovations to reduce climate gas production. And fruit and veggie growers of Canada, with whether it's transportation or whether it's fertilization, or so, could you give us some highlights as to how you're helping prepare to reduce the impact of potential carbon border adjustment?
I'll try to help facilitate. Go ahead, Mr. Fulton. You start. You look like you're ready to go.
Thank you. Thanks for the question. Absolutely. The beef sector relies very heavily on export markets, on trade agreements. We export roughly 50% of our cattle or beef abroad. And so we are very focused on all aspects that could influence that, not the least of which is, for example, 282, that's a big concern to our industry, but also on carbon border adjustments. So specifically, you mentioned methane. What I can speak to is a protocol that is designed to allow ranchers and cattle producers to benefit if they can show a reduction in methane production. There are a lot of good technological advanced products that we can point to that actually really helps to reduce those. But it's important that those incentives are aligned with producers can't afford to just spend the money on that technology without somehow realizing a benefit. But I think in general, we identify the fact that we need to do our part, and that's why really I would point to the grasslands and the fact that we use these natural environments that sequester carbon as our places of work where we produce that beef. We've got a great story to tell, and we can talk more about it.
Our folks from CropLife, there was a reference to you, if you'd like to weigh in quickly.
Yes, thank you. I would say that on the whole, the ag industry is quite focused, if not seized, with the idea of being environmentally and responsible and sustainable. Certainly from a plant science perspective, whether it's the use of plant breeding innovations in order to grow more on less land under rather adverse conditions, or the ability, for instance, for us to protect the crops we have and ensure a higher yield. No farmer wants to see their crops, for instance, go to waste, and we want to make sure that we can provide, as I mentioned in our opening remarks, food not only for our country but for the world. So the environmental component and the sustainability element is key to ensuring the long-term success of the industry.
Yes.
Oh, you're just on mute there, Ms. Murray. I apologize.
I was going to add that I appreciate hearing that, because I heard your priorities at being food security and affordability, which are critical, but I didn't hear sustainability until now. So thanks for sharing that.
Okay, Mr. Lewis, you have about a minute and 20 seconds.
I'll do it. I thank you very much for your time. Quick question for fruit and vegetable growers, Executive Director Massimino Bergamini. Really intrigued by you talking about the idea of putting a food lens on all public policy for food security as a national priority. I think that really resonated with, I think, people on both sides of this table. With that question of will the policy enhance or reduce food production? So I appreciate you sharing this at the federal level. Are you having these discussions at the provincial level at all as well?
Not yet, but we intend to. It should be all orders of government.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think this is a nonpartisan issue about feeding people. Quick question with the remaining time. Cattle Association. Herd levels are down in Canada, levels that haven't been seen since 1987. The U.S., it's actually, their levels are down to where they were in 1951, I believe. If the government was to move ahead with the livestock price insurance, what kind of evidence do we have that would ensure the growth of this sector? Have you done a study? Is that something, the study is public, or something you can share with this committee so we can advocate?
I would make reference to some materials that we shared that reflect the uptake of the program. It's a very similar program in the United States, showing when there was cost-shared premiums, it really increased the use of the program. And I would just point back to the fact that the cattle business is risky. And what we would identify as really our biggest risk is that price risk. And currently, in particular, ranching or the cow-calf side doesn't have the tools to, to really address those risks. This is one that the industry is fully supportive of and puts us on a level playing field. I think the combination of that in terms of land use, but also on that young, with the lens of a young producer starting up, and how leveraged they are. I'm really confident that we'll see a recovery and growth in the cow herd.
We're at time. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Thank you, Mr. Fulton. 2 quick questions from the chair. Do you have a per animal opportunity cost of SRM? Is that something you can provide to this committee? So how much there's actually essentially additional costs, I think would be helpful for this committee in terms of not having SRM aligned with the U.S. You don't need to answer. Maybe my conservatives already know, my friends. And my second question is to the canola growers, or Canola Growers Association. APAS had been on the Hill last week as part of the CFA days. One of the things that was raised was the idea that the rail companies pass off the entirety of the carbon price as part of their pricing model down to shippers. Is that your understanding that that is true? And is there any policy argument to say that although maybe some costs should be passed off, certainly the intent of the carbon price is to actually adjust and drive down kind of innovative behavior? And if that's not happening, in that the entirety of the cost should not be passed on to the sector, is there validity to that argument?
That's my understanding, and the newest issue we're dealing with is the railroads are really pushing differential pricing, which means they want to flatten the curve, as opposed to farmers needing access to rail capacity when they're harvesting. We're looking on the horizon of very significant increases to costs for railways, for shippers, which impact farmers during peak times of harvest. And that we have no opportunity to do anything about that. When we're harvesting, South America and Australia aren't, which is when we need to get to market. So significant cost passed down, absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much. On behalf of all my colleagues, I'd like to thank the witnesses for your work and your testimony here today. Colleagues, we're going to suspend very quickly, and we're going to turn around the second panel in about 2 minutes. Meeting suspended. Colleagues, we're going to get started with the second panel. If I can find my notes here somewhere to let us know. I know, first of all, we do have from the National Farmers Union, Katie Ward. So welcome back to the committee. From the Association des producteurs maraîchers.
From the Association of Fruit and Vegetable Growers of Quebec, Ms. Catherine Lefebvre and Patrice Léger-Bourgoin.
Of Canadian Agriculture, Canadian Federation of Agriculture, Keith Curry, President, and Brody Berrigan. And last but not least, from P&D Dykstra Farms, Phil Dykstra. Thanks for helping get our sound all correct there, Mr. Dykstra, and we're excited to have you before the committee. Colleagues, we're going to move quickly again. We're a little bit behind time, so I know our witnesses will do a good job. No more than 5 minutes. I will be a little bit more strict today, and appreciate hearing some of your concrete ideas on low-cost or no-cost measures to support your industry. I'm going to start... Je vais commencer avec Association.
I will start with the Association of Fruit and Vegetable Growers of Quebec for 5 minutes, please. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen, members of the committee. As citizens, we can't help but be concerned about the state of public finances. In this context, we're not going to submit any requests to you today that would have the effect of increasing pressure on this already precarious situation. Instead, we will focus on recommendations on the efficiency of the state's human and financial resources in order to ensure that the population's food resilience lives up to its expectations. For us, the issue is paramount. The government needs to set clear performance targets, particularly for public policies that direct government action towards decisions that have a concrete and direct impact on the competitiveness of our businesses while preserving the collective interest. First, let's address the issue of fairness. We've said it many times. It is imperative to strengthen controls on imported fruit and vegetables. Canadian regulations do not impose the same requirements and controls on the companies that grow the vegetables and fruit that are subsequently imported into Canada. One example among many, Canada's Food Safety Act imposes numerous traceability requirements on local producers. Numerous inspections and controls are carried out to verify compliance. We rely on importers rather than controlling producers directly. In our view, this is unfair. It is becoming increasingly urgent to inventory and document situations of unfair competition. These proposals do not involve any extraordinary additional expenditure, but simply a reallocation of existing resources. We ask that border controls related to food safety, phytosanitary protection, and the presence of pesticide residues be strengthened to better protect Canadians and provide equity between the treatment of imported and domestic foods. Secondly, let's talk about regulatory distortion. This situation arises when Canadian requirements impact the competitiveness of local companies. Canadian vegetable and fruit producers operate in a highly integrated North American market. It's essential that Canada's different trade rules don't, or as little as possible, harm the competitiveness of our farms. Here's an example. When the PMRA requires specific Canadian characteristics in order to register a pest control product, it goes without saying that the health of workers and the public must take precedence over all other considerations. However, the economic impact of the decision must also be taken into account. Let me explain. Most crop protection products arrive from the four corners of the globe, but mainly from the United States. Canada is a small player on the world stage. If Canadian requirements and registration costs are unjustifiable in the eyes of the manufacturer, it will be easy to give up and not make products available in our jurisdiction. As manufacturers consolidate, the possibility of finding a substitute product becomes increasingly rare. Patrice, on to you. We are very concerned about the PMRA's approach. We adhere to the principles of scientific rigor and independence in order to protect the health of our fellow citizens. However, we are of the opinion that a rigorous but more efficient analysis process could be put in place. Submission times for plant protection products for certification are far too long to adapt to commercial and climate changes. At present, the PMRA is unable to meet its own performance targets in terms of lead times. We are calling for a corrective plan to improve the efficiency of the current process for processing apologies, of the current process for minor use applications for plant protection products. Our third point is the improvement of risk management programs. In the context of increasing climate risks, it is necessary to adapt the current parameters. Climate change is exacerbating environmental problems and creating new challenges. More than ever, government programs need to be linked more effectively with personal risk management strategies. Agri-protection or crop insurance and agri-stability need to be reviewed to better reflect new needs. Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada must coordinate with the provinces and be flexible enough to implement innovative solutions that meet producers' needs. In conclusion, make no mistake, we're not advocating widespread deregulation nor a reduction in the role of government. Sound and effective regulation is the ultimate mechanism for protecting the public interest. When well designed, regulation aims to manage risk appropriately. Our request is simply for better collaboration with economic players. Here's an example. If the PMRA, sorry, Mr. Bourgoin, unfortunately your time is up, but I am sure you will have some time to answer through questions later.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the committee members. It's good to be back in front of this committee. As most of you know, my name is Keith Curry. I'm the chair of CFA, and I'm an 8th-generation farmer here in Ontario. As the chair mentioned in a previous session, we recently conducted our Hill Day here in Ottawa last week, where we met with many MPs and senators to discuss our priorities. And in a lot of cases, it was part of our pre-budget submission, which everyone can find to have a list of these priorities in front of them. I'd just like to situate our recommendations in some broader context. Producers are facing challenges across the country, including interest rates and debt servicing costs that are the highest they've been since the 1980s. Farmers are also facing more frequent and severe weather events, while at the same time anticipating the next labor disruption and supply, in the supply chain. Our sector is also struggling to find workers, with the most recent statistics pointing out a total of nearly 30,000 jobs going unfulfilled on the farm, costing the sector almost $3.5 billion in lost revenues. All this is happening against a backdrop of declining agriculture productivity growth, when the demand for agricultural products and food security concerns have increased. We have several recommendations to target these challenges. By raising the interest-free portion of the advanced payments program and reintroducing the accelerated capital cost allowance, we would help farmers with cash flow and their ability to invest in their operations. In addition, we recommend maintaining the priority focus on the agriculture within the temporary foreign worker program to support farmers' seasonal labor needs, while at the same time supporting pathways to permanent residency for industries with year-round labor requirements. We would also like to expand the extended interswitching pilot program to encourage competition between railways and enhance the overall efficiency of the Canadian supply chain. And lastly, on the short-term list, we cannot wait until 2028, when the next 5-year FPT framework is implemented, to address the sector's disaster relief needs. That's why we are recommending that the Government of Canada, in partnership with the provinces and territories and industry, immediately convene a disaster relief summit and strike a task team to look at options to better respond to environmental-related disaster events. We also have several recommendations that might improve the long-term health of Canada's agriculture sector. We need to reduce unnecessary costs and regulatory barriers which threaten our ability to compete internationally. The PMRA and CFIA are key government regulators under the health portfolio, which directly impact the availability of pest control products, as well as labeling, packaging, licensing, certification, etc., of Canadian agriculture and agri-food products. While these functions are critical to maintaining Canada's domestic and international reputation as a supplier of safe, quality agricultural products, decisions are made without sufficient consideration of the economic impacts or competitiveness of Canadian businesses. We would also recommend that the responsibility for both CFIA and aquaculture sector be transferred to AAFC to ensure that policies are better aligned with economic objectives and to ensure all of Canada's agriculture commodities are handled by the same department. Aquaculture is agriculture. Our second priority involves the Canada Grain Act, which is increasingly outdated and challenged to both protect grain producers and respond to evolving global demands for their products. Another priority involves updating the Canada Grain Act to address key areas of concern to producers while reaffirming the Canadian Grain Commission's mandate to maintain standards and regulate grain handling in the interests of grain producers. Furthermore, if we want to reverse the trend towards declining productivity growth in Canada, we need to invest in innovation and data-driven technologies. There are several challenges standing in the way of progress, including connectivity limitations, high upfront costs with purchasing precision agriculture equipment, farm data ownership concerns around trust, and how data is being used. As a result, we published a report called Data as a Foundation for Sustainability Productivity Growth that includes several recommendations, including the creation of a pan-Canadian data strategy that would coordinate investment in digital skills, research, programming, and farm-level data measurement to support Canada's productivity and sustainable objectives. Finally, we all know that thousands of farmers and ranchers across Canada are heavily reliant on exports, while thousands more rely on rail service to get across critical inputs for essential farm practices. We need to find solutions that will reduce the risk of future labor disruptions, which are destabilizing for the Canadian economy, the Canadian public, and Canadian farming. For that reason, CFA has been calling for the development of a critical farm and food and farm input strategy that would prioritize the transportation of agriculture food products during labor disruptions and ensure Canadian producers have long-term stable source of supply for critical farm inputs needed to produce quality agriculture and agri-food products. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. We'll now turn to the National Farmers Union. Ms. Ward, over to you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, honorable members of the committee. I appreciate the invitation to speak to you today concerning the priorities of the agriculture sector on behalf of the National Farmers Union. As a general farm organization with thousands of direct members from coast to coast to coast engaged in farming across all commodities and at all scales, the National Farmers Union believes in strong communities, sound policies, and sustainable farms. In our view, the priorities of the agriculture sector over the coming years will be centered around concentration, disruption, and resilience. Concentration of suppliers and market outlets for farms and ranchers has been an ongoing concern for a long time now, and the cycle of mergers and acquisitions is most recently highlighted by the proposed Bunge-Viterra deal. If the acquisition is allowed, Bunge will become the world's largest agricultural commodity trader, and minor concessions so far required by the recent European Commission's approval of the deal will have a negligible effect on their ability to use their massive footprint to influence markets, prices, and production to advance their own interests at the expense of farmers and consumers. Corporate concentration in the food processing and retailing sectors has long been an issue for elected leadership and regulatory bodies to grapple with, meatpacking and grocery retailers being so concentrated that both farmers and consumers are withering under inelastic and uncompetitive pricing structures. Data ownership, aggregation, and transparency are likewise impacted by corporate concentration, from shared data platforms, precision agriculture, and advanced data analytics tools, including artificial intelligence and its outsized energy requirements. Farmers and ranchers need our elected officials to effectively protect our interests to ensure we do not end up in the same boat as the general public on social media platforms, with us and our information being the product that's sold to others for their profit while we see negligible benefits. Aggregation of this data then increases the risk of exposure farms and ranches face when ransomware and malware attacks can affect any aspect of our operations that has a connection to our increasingly online way of doing business. Data aggregation and sale also has implications for farmland ownership consolidation trends that have been accelerating in Canada for many years. This ownership concentration is particularly concerning when investment funds and housing developers accumulate farmland, which then inflates the shrinking inventory of farmland that's desperately needed by new and aspiring farmers who could otherwise start new enterprises. There's great irony in farmland financialization as a strategy by investment funds to hedge against risk in other industries when farms and ranchers are exceedingly susceptible to geopolitical shocks such as shipping interruptions due to overseas military conflicts, tariffs, and other trade disputes between nations, and of course climate events causing disruption to our supply chains, our ability to market our crops, and even our ability to produce a crop at all. Financialization of farmland is clearly not benefiting farmers in the aggregate, as farm debt currently sits at $146 billion, interest rates are high, and land prices are increasingly decoupled from the productive value of land itself. The negative impact that climate events are already having on the infrastructure our industry depends on needs to be recognized as a clear risk to our food security and food sovereignty. Direct effects of extreme weather events caused by climate change have been hitting our farms and ranches for years now, and it will not surprise members of this committee that farmers remain concerned about the inadequacy of existing risk management programs in terms of accessibility, speed of process, and financial coverage in the event of both localized and widespread disasters. When we scan movement by private insurance companies worldwide, the fact that they are departing from entire jurisdictions based on flood or wildfire risk tells us that we must both maintain and improve upon effective public risk management programs for agriculture. But we got into this risky scenario together, and we can work together to mitigate the consequences and adapt to the disruptions we now face. As members of this committee know, the NFU is a passionate advocate for a farm resilience agency based upon the incredibly successful Prairie Farm Rehabilitation Administration. We need a Canadian Farm Resilience Agency to facilitate transparent and independent knowledge exchange and adoption of ecological practices that will reduce emissions on our farms. We're also calling on government to reinstitute efficacy testing for non-fertilizer farm inputs that would make use of existing expertise among staff at CFIA and AAFC, which prior to 2013 were a statistically reliable alternative to fossil fuel-based fertilizers. Farmers are facing more than enough financial risk. We should not continue to force them into a buy-and-try approach to reducing emissions on an ad hoc basis. On a strategic level, we're nearing the end of the second year of the Sustainable Agriculture Strategy process, and the NFU believes it's increasingly important that the government complete and release the SAS. Going further, we believe the strategy should be used as a basis for expanded programs and policies and funding to help farmers adopt emissions-reducing, resilience-building, and biodiversity-protecting practices. Along with Farmers for Climate Solutions and Canadian Organic Growers, the NFU has advocated that the government should consider funding levels on the order of $860 million in order to meet the sustainability needs of the sector under this strategy. And of course, sustainability in the agriculture sector cannot be achieved without a plan for generational succession on our farms and ranches. All the topics I've touched on are at the top of mind for our young members, as well as aspiring farmers and ranchers who might not be so young anymore. The NFU's youth and BIPOC caucus members are very engaged around land access issues and the lack of an equitable strategy focused on the farm labor crisis, as well as the lack of a comprehensive strategy around succession in agriculture that's resulted in aging farmers relying on the financialization of farmland to fund their retirements, further driving farmland out of reach of the next generation while putting our food security and food sovereignty at further risk. Thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. We'll now turn to Mr. Dykstra for up to 5 minutes, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for having me here. I've just wanted to update you a little bit on what we're doing. I think you've been briefed earlier, or maybe last year, by the Ontario Pork Producers Marketing Board in terms of the situation that is on Ontario hog farmers. You'll be well aware that 10 years ago we lost quality meats, and that moved a lot of hogs into Quebec. Quebec, in the last couple of years, Ole Mill primarily has closed a couple of hog plants, packing plants, and essentially has dispersed Ontario hogs. 25,000 hogs a week are now being sent to other places, mostly into the U.S., some into Manitoba. Anyway, the freight bill is significant. So we're exporting into the U.S. ourselves now, and we feel there's been a loss of jobs, a loss of adding value, and we also feel that we're really subject to trade risk and to border risk as our live animals do cross. We know we've seen trade action on live hogs, probably one every 10 to 12 years we see something, whether it's MCOOL or anti-dumping, you name it. There's certainly going to be lots of eyes on the next week on the presidential election, see how that plays out, and certainly with the discussion around Bill 282 and some of these things, it gives us pretty big concerns. What's happened now is a number of us as primary producers, 15 of us now have joined together, and we purchased a small plant just outside of Arthur, Ontario, called Domingo's Meat Packers. Domingo's Meat Packers is a small provincial plant that was harvesting 1,900 hogs a week. We have got that business now running up to 3,000 hogs a week. And we are in the process. We are pushing dirt. We are pouring concrete, laying down footings, and we are building a new federal plant just outside of Arthur, Ontario. And the goal of this new federal plant will be to, at its capacity, harvest 12,000 hogs a week on a single shift. And that, plus the small provincial plant, will bring us to a total of 15,000 a week. We've made a significant investment. I'm the son of an immigrant farmer. I've got a couple of sons farming with me. My wife and I are fortunate to have 6 grandchildren, God willing, a couple of them to stick around. But this whole strategy is about sustainability and about integrating our business and making sure that we're relevant in years to come. We've put collectively, we put down $25 million of hard capital. We're in the process of drumming up some more cash to put in, and we have leveraged farm credit for a sizable loan. And all of this is to invest in a $60 million new facility that will add value to our pork, that will reduce our transportation costs by $13 million, reduce our border risk. We're going to add 300 direct jobs to the area of Waterloo and create another 20 management positions. So we are actually feeling pretty grateful and feeling pretty blessed that we can move ahead with a project like this, that we've been able to leverage some good people at Farm Credit Corporation, and that we've got a good place in Ontario to grow. We still have a few more priorities that need some attention. We probably won't be able to get it done near term. We were wondering if, if there's ways and means that we can work together to build perhaps a water treatment plant, which would help us reduce the need of the water, and we can recycle that water. We're looking at things like truck washes to minimize our disease risk and to enhance our biosecurity. We're in the process of setting up a training center. We're going to need we're likely investing about $500,000 just in training people over the next 3 years. So there's lots going on. Anyway, I don't know how much time I've used, but everyone talks really, really fast these meetings. That's pretty impressive. And I'll just say, you know what, if there's any questions afterwards, be happy to entertain them. I could talk about it all day. And again, thanks for welcoming me here and letting me share with you this opportunity that we're working on.
Look, very well done, Mr. Dykstra. 4 minutes and 53 seconds. So that's right on time. You fit right in right here, and it's great to have your testimony. Colleagues, we are going to turn to questions. 6-minute rounds times 4 is about 24 minutes. I will probably allow for 1 round and maybe just a bit of a truncated second round for any kind of follow-up questions we didn't get, just to be fair to our colleagues and the larger parties. I'm going to start with Mr. Barlow or the Conservatives. 6 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm going to be splitting my time with Mr. Rep. I guess I want to start with Mr. Curry first. You had mentioned about the PMRA, and we had CropLife here in the previous panel, and I didn't have time to ask another question, but I'm going to ask it to you. $80 million has been allocated to PMRA over the next 5 years, and we certainly heard how PMRA is increasing the registration fees for plant protection products by 250%, and the impact that is going to have on Canadian farmers. Do you have an idea where that $80 million is being spent, and is there some consultation happening with the CFA?
No, the answer is no. I don't know where that money is being spent. What we have found increasingly with governments in general is a lack of consultation on just about everything, this being included. And I think as we go forward, it's not about how or where we're going, but it's how we get there and how we get there together. And certainly if PMRA could be a little more transparent on all this coming about, I'm sure we could find a pathway that would be effective for all parties involved. But to have this kind of increase in fees is only going to come back to my producers that I represent. They're going to have to pay this at the end of the day, because these costs are not going to be borne by the companies that are applying for these new products that are coming on board. So I don't understand where the fees are coming from, and I don't understand where the money is being spent.
So, and we have, one example, I guess, would be with Lambda Psi, for example, that was one important crop protection product that it seems the PMRA knows they made a mistake in how that was that reassessment was done. With this increase in fees and this additional funding, are you seeing any, and I think we kind of heard this from our previous witness, but I want to ask you as well, we would be 10 times more expensive than our closest competitor and trading partner in the United States, making us even that much more uncompetitive. Are you seeing any better service for these increase in fees or this additional government dollars that's been given to PMRA?
Certainly CropLife would be better to speak to the actual service on the ground, but from what I'm seeing and hearing from my members, the answer is no, the service has not changed. I think, it leads into what was this, I know it was mentioned in the previous session. I know there's a private members bill to 359 that's been going through the House that would lean heavily on our trusted partners around the world to help us expedite some of these products that we potentially don't have but could have because our partners are using them, which is, again, a competitive disadvantage. So these are the kinds of things that through discussions you would hope that you could talk with folks like PMRA to make life easier for us on the ground to be more competitive, more productive, and more efficient.
You have good ideas like 359 should be a government bill, but unfortunately, a government members had to do it as a private members bill. But on another issue, you admit we do have a study perhaps coming up in the next little while, but we have the railroads have. We've talked about interswitching, but there's an important date coming up where the railways are relinquishing responsibility for rail crossings that are on private property and farmland. Can you just give us a quick assessment of the impact that this could have on your members, but certainly as Canadian farmers, having to take the responsibility of the upgrading of these crossings?
Yes, my understanding is that the premise around these crossings is primarily around siting, which makes sense from a safety aspect. But we've had members, in particular in Ontario, where it seems to be a bigger issue than other parts of the province, but not exclusive to Ontario, having to potentially spend up to $500,000 to upgrade crossings. So I don't know what farm operation just has $500,000 sitting in their back pocket to upgrade a crossing. And somewhere along the line, the rules got changed because the rail lines were always responsible for these upgrades and for these maintaining these crossings. So it'll be very expensive to those who have rail lines going across their properties. And if they can't afford to pay it, it literally would be cutting farms in half, cutting operations in half.
Thanks, Mr. Curry. And I'm sure those costs will be insurmountable, but be passed on again to, farmers can't pass on those costs to anyone. So I'm going to relinquish the rest of my time to Mr. Rep.
Just very, very quickly, I'll stay on the railways to start. Ontario has been told that the two major railways will no longer respect the Ontario Drainage Act. Are you hearing that from across Canada, that they're also pulling out of other drainage aspects in other parts of the country?
We're looking into the across Canada part. We certainly are well aware of what's going on here in Ontario with respect to drainage and how they are pulling out of that, even though I guess things got changed 20 years ago in the Act or something, but it's just news to us now, so we are looking into the broader aspect of across Canada.
Thank you. I'm going to switch gears a little bit to C280. I'm going to invite comment from the CFA and also from our friends in Quebec, the fruit and vegetable growers. Do you know the position of the Canadian Bankers Association with respect to 280? Have you seen or heard or have you met with them? Are they supportive of 280? Are they opposed to 280? Have you seen a public statement?
I can't say that I've seen the public statement, but I can say I've heard that they're not in favor of it. They seem to feel that it's going to impose some kind of undue stress on financial stress, when the reality is, it's a program that we had 20 some odd years ago that actually is being looked to be reintroduced, which will actually give some financial assurance to producers, especially in your area that's large in the horticulture production, that when they send a product to market, they're actually going to get paid for it in the event of an insolvency or non-payment by a buyer.
And for our
very quickly, because we are at time. I don't know if that made it through, Mr. Rep, but I will say, and I'll acknowledge for our friends from Quebec and also to CFA. This committee shares the concern and the importance of passing 280. We've written a letter to the Senate to say to get on with it, especially with 320 to 1 in the House. It is a clear and uniform support from the democratically elected House of Commons. So we would share that concern. Thank you, Mr. Epp. We'll now turn to Ms. Taylor-Roy. You have 6 minutes, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I will be sharing my time with my colleague, Mr. Lewis. My question is for Mr. Phil Dykstra. First, I want to thank you for this project that you are part of. I'm sure it's welcome news to Ontario hog farmers and to the agri-food sector overall. We know it's going to add value to what we're doing in Canada, and since the closure of Olymel, obviously this is much needed. So I know it's going to not only add value, but we're going to see reduced emissions from shorter drives, if you mentioned the cost of that, and it's also the environmental cost, and greater food security for Canada. You mentioned the border issues as well. So this, vertically integrating like this is something that I think all Canadians think is wise, and especially now when pork is one of the lower cost animal proteins available, it's very important. So we want to support the Canadian Gate to Plate initiative. And I'm just wondering if you can talk about what support you have received from the Government of Ontario, and what measures our government could take in addition to the FCC credit package to support the development and sustainability of this producer-owned pork processing plant in Arthur, Ontario. Oh, and I also, before I go there, I just want to commend you, because I did notice in the prospectus that you'd sent over that you're also focused on net zero and sustainability, environmental sustainability. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks for the question. At this point, we are in the process of meeting with MPP Matthew Ray out of Perth County, Perth Waterloo. So we've got another scheduled meeting with them to further outline our needs. Probably the biggest needs are from a provincial perspective are related to infrastructure. We expect we're going to have to spend another $1.5 million bringing up to date hydro power into the plant. We would dearly love to eliminate the need to truck in propane, but rather pipe in natural gas. We will be using that. So those are a couple of things that we will focus on at the provincial level. I think when we talk about being net zero, I mean, we do want to reduce our transportation. A lot of our transporters now, they'll have to leave and go elsewhere to wash their trucks. And you're probably all well aware of the African swine fever, the ASF risk. The old plant that we're doing with, we are tapping into CFIA funds to work at setting the old plant up to actually be used for welfare. Should we have an African swine fever risk or outbreak, help us all if we do. But we will have a plant there that is set up and able to deal with some of the fallout of that. And the truck wash and the piece of that would help aid in managing risk disease and moving things around beyond our little plant there. So that's a big piece. And then the next piece, of course, is the water treatment. We'd like to put in a DAF system there. We think that'd be very, very beneficial, as we will be using a processing plant uses about 300 liters of water per hog per day. We're going to go through a lot of water, and if we can recycle that, reuse that, and not tax the aquifers that are underneath us, that'll be also very beneficial, and would help to our sustainability plan.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Dykstra. And I think that we want to ensure that these facilities are as environmentally friendly and conserve our water. So those sound like good initiatives as well. I am going to now pass my time to Mr. Lewis.
Thank you for that. And before I get to the questions, I just wanted to mention about a study I'd like to do. Hopefully it has an interest to all of us, specifically my colleagues from Southwest Ontario. That the spotted lantern is an invasive species that poses a significant risk to agriculture. And it's been in the United States. Now it's been spotted in Southwest Ontario. It can lead to damaged crops, increased production costs, and reduced yields. So I would like to put a notice of motion that given spotted lanternflies have been detected in Windsor, Ontario, posing a threat to agriculture, the committee invite officials to appear and brief the committee on testing, surveillance efforts, and threat mitigation steps being taken to protect Canada's agriculture sector in the Southwest Ontario. That one in-camera meeting be set aside for this study. So in the interest of time, I'd maybe not discuss it now, but I just want to put that down as a notice and we can talk about it a bit later. So thank you, Chair. And I would get to the questions. So thank you. Ms. Ward from the National Farmers Union, can you expand on how the National Farmers Union is promoting sustainable farming practices among its members, and what supports would you like to see increased as we move forward with our policies?
And we have about 45 seconds left, so in that time, if we could.
6 questions.
Thank you for the question. We actually have piloted a series of NF University webinars over the last number of years, inviting ecological speakers and practitioners to exchange knowledge with our producer members. And we're very engaged as a founder of Farmers for Climate Solutions, as well as working on the sustainable agriculture strategy and consulting on that. But we're very focused on spreading the word about ecological agriculture and agroecology to our members.
OK, perfect. Maintenant, Monsieur Parent, mon ami au Québec. 6 minutes, s'il vous plaît, monsieur.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Merci aux témoins d'être avec nous. Je vais essayer d'aller rapidement. J'ai beaucoup de questions, pas beaucoup de temps. Monsieur Curry, c'est... Il y a un témoin tantôt qui a soulevé...
Juste, désolé, il y a un problème technique.
Sorry, there seems to be a technical issue with the interpretation. Apologies from the interpreter. I was on the wrong channel. I'm just going to start the clock over again. I will continue to speak in French. All good? Start over? All right. So hello to the witnesses. Sorry if you did not hear my introduction. Thank you for being here with us. I'm going to go quickly. Please try to give brief answers. Mr. Curry, a witness earlier mentioned C-282 as if it poses a problem to the environment, but I think it's something positive. I think that it favors local conservation, prevents overproduction. What do you think?
From that aspect, yes. Excuse me. I mean, 282 is a bill that involves supply management, which is a domestic production program. And so certainly by means of only producing products for domestic consumption, you're limiting transportation factors, you're producing food locally, so it's reducing your carbon footprint overall. So yes, supply management certainly does. Yeah.
Merci beaucoup. Sur l'ARLA, il y a...
Thank you. With regard to the PMRA, a lot of witnesses refer to the PMRA and talk about the certification of products and the delays. The United States are a much bigger market than ours. Big corporate companies will certify their products in the United States before they do so here. Mr. Curry, would it be possible to take on a collaboration with jurisdictions that have similar standards to ours, briefly? Do you think that that would be a good idea for us to share that those responsibilities and try to establish some sort of uniformity with whether it be in North America or in Europe?
Absolutely. Not only from a cost perspective and reducing costs, you're not reinventing the wheel, you're not trying to create another study that will come to the same result. Certainly, I would caution that any studies done elsewhere still need to go through that peer review aspect to verify the validity of the study done, but certainly it would be not only expedite access to products, but cut the cost down tremendously.
Parfait. Merci beaucoup. J'aimerais producteur maraîcher du Québec sur la main.
Thank you very much. I'd like to hear the fruit and vegetable growers of Quebec. of course, we're talking about an integrated market, and we have to go a little bit further in our reflection. We're talking about commercializing products. Now, can we work upstream and, for example, have certification of phytosanitary products? We should be asking these questions. Thank you very much. Ms. Ward, same question.
I definitely would agree with any harmonization would need to still go through peer review, but I would always caution that harmonization doesn't become a race to the bottom, that we maintain the standards that we want for our products and the safety of our consumers here in Canada.
Merci, merci beaucoup.
Thank you. That is a very important point that you've raised. Indeed, we're not trying to make things worse, but improve things and maybe improve the homogeneity between various markets that have a lot of trade between them. Back to the vegetable and growers of Quebec, we talked about reciprocity of standards. You talked about this earlier. It wouldn't cost a lot of money to the government as a measure, but we can maybe make a very big difference if we were to shift our focus, though. What we're asking for is to relocalize the resources and do the real inspections and the same inspections that Canadian products get for foreign products. Thank you for your clear and concise answers. Ms. Ward, if you'd like to insist on a certain point, I'll give you 20 seconds to make a recommendation to the committee.
My core recommendation would be to push for an advance on the sustainable agriculture study. I think that this is going to provide the means for farmers in this country and ranchers to have the tools to move forward and achieving our climate goals.
Merci, vous êtes vraiment des super.
Thank you. You've been fantastic witnesses. You've been respecting my short time. I'd like to ask you a question, Chair. You asked about C20 280 earlier, but there's also a letter for 282. Should I ask my question now, or will we have time at the end of the committee? I think that we can do that after the questions to the witnesses. We'll have a few minutes to discuss the letter about 282. So you have 30 seconds left if you'd like, but we can have a discussion about this afterwards. I will take those 20 questions with the fruit and vegetable growers. Can you make a recommendation to the committee? The risk management programs need to put an emphasis on how quickly we need to react. It's necessary for the survival of our producers in Quebec with climate change. Thank you, Mr. McGregor, for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to each of our witnesses for being with us today. Ms. Ward, maybe I'll start with you. When you were making your opening comments, you and I, of course, have discussed the development of a Canadian Farm Resilience Agency before. But it was interesting because on the NFU's website, you put that in the context of what we did in the 1930s in response to extensive drought conditions, which drove out thousands of people off the prairies. And the Prairie Farm Rehabilitation Administration was basically set up to help farmers conserve soil, prevent erosion, develop water resources, and manage pasture land, really in response to the conditions that they were facing. The NFU argues that with what we're going through today, the CFRA is going to be sort of a similar response to a similar crisis. Can you just sort of elaborate on that? Maybe put into the record some of the things you're hoping that this agency will help farmers in building that resilience to what we're facing right now.
Thank you. So when the Dust Bowl hit in the 30s, it was beyond the scope of any one farm, any commodity group, any one province to tackle on their own. It really required a degree of cooperation and work at scale to be able to craft a solution and implement these practices that for a lot of farms were new at the time. Reversing taking out shelter belts and instead putting them in. And what we really are seeing now is, depending on where you are, you're either facing drought again, or you're facing atmospheric rivers, or wildfires. And the system that the PFRA had put in place was to institute expert knowledge exchange. You'd have agronomists and agrologists who were independent of profit motive going onto farms and giving advice to farmers and ranchers. And you knew that the advice that you were getting wasn't just trying to sell you something. It was with a mandate to improve sustainability on farms. And so those civil servants were welcomed onto farms no matter what the political winds of the day were, no matter what the jurisdiction was. And it went on for decades, and those experts were very respected in facilitating knowledge exchange and passing along new information and new science to farmers so that they could put in place these more sustainable practices. I think this is the kind of thing that we really need to, as one of the members mentioned earlier, use as an argument against border carbon adjustments, because we need to have a strategy in place. We need to have arguments built up to say we are taking action on these issues, and we're improving our practices on our farms. And this is going to provide the baseline scientific data as well that we're going to need to back up those claims.
I mean, I know that farmers are deeply suspicious of an Ottawa knows best approach. But luckily, we have a lot of amazing farmers out there who are really pushing the envelope, and they are demonstrating real results in how they, through a major extreme weather event, their land has been able to withstand it and come back much more quickly than, say, their neighbors who are not engaged in the same kind of practices. So there's also a strong financial incentive there, in that you're not only protecting your farmland ecologically, but you're back up on your feet much more quickly, maybe with less government intervention. So, like, how do you think the establishment of a CFRA, is this going to be, in your vision, sort of by farmers for farmers kind of an agency, avoiding that sort of bureaucrat trap that we might fall into?
I think relying on the model of the PFRA, because there are still a lot of farmers in the prairies specifically. It was a prairie-specific agency that had great respect for the scientists and the agronomists and the agrologists who were able to go on farms and do workshops and knowledge exchanges at things like the experimental farms and the experimental stations that are still in some cases spread across the prairies. I think there's definitely got to be an aspect of knowledge sharing between farmers, but there is a data gathering, scientific aspect to this that is in a lot of cases beyond the scope of a lot of farms and ranches, and we need to be able to prove that our practices are working. I think as long as you are able to make the argument that you're taking the profit incentive out of this for the people that are giving the advice, that builds a large measure of trust.
Thank you. And quickly, Mr. Curry, I've asked officials repeatedly about whether business risk management programs are properly equipped for some of the challenges of farming in the 21st century. And you said we can't wait until 2028 when the new partnership is to be renegotiated. Can you just give this committee a sense of what the scale of the disconnect? How short are these programs now falling, given the realities that so many farmers are facing with climate-related disasters and impacts on their operations?
Thanks for the question. And there's really two aspects to it. One is a timeliness aspect to it, whether it's agri-stability or agri-recovery. They're slow in responding when they need to from a financial aspect to farmers' needs, whether it's an atmospheric river or drought or hurricanes in Atlantic Canada, whatever the case may be. So that speed is necessary to get people back on the road of delivering the funds. The other aspect is the incapacity financially of the programs to meet the financial demands. Environmental issues should not be it should not be borne just by agriculture. It's all of government that needs to be involved in making sure that we are doing everything that we can in a preventative measure so that we can recover quickly, to your point, and prevent less damage, make sure there's less damage in this action. So that's where we feel this discussion needs to happen sooner rather than later, not wait till 2028 when when SCAP comes up for renewal and we need to open up again.
Thank you.
We're at time, Mr. McGregor. Thank you, Mr. Curry. Colleagues, that brings us to the end of our round of questioning. Obviously, we're a little bit delayed, but I'm going to address the point that Mr. Parent raised, but obviously I think it would be appropriate to thank and release our witnesses. On behalf of all my colleagues, merci beaucoup pour toutes nos témoins pour...
Thank you to all of our witnesses. I'd like to thank you on behalf of our colleagues. Thank you for everything you do for agriculture in Canada.
Release you. Colleagues, just very quickly, we talked about, I wasn't in the chair last week. I understand that on the advice of all parties on this committee, there was 2 letters drafted. One was on C-280, which I have moved with your expediency. It is now going to be going off to the Senate at the advice of my vice chair, and he and I discussed all senators are going to be tagged in that, not just the Senate committee that is dealing with 280. On 282, obviously I did receive a little bit more correspondence. I have the draft here. I just need some guidance because ultimately the letter in my name is a reflection of where this committee's at. So you've all had the chance to review this letter. Are we good to be able to send this off to the Senate? I see your hand, Mr. Barlow.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Certainly in conversations with people around the table, as the Conservatives, we can't support sending this letter to the Senate, and I'll give 2 reasons why. And I'll stick with what my initial concern was, is this bill was not studied at this committee. But one paragraph in particular in this letter, which I understand my colleague, Mr. Perron, does not want to remove, which I think is the game breaker for us, is under the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement with the European Union, and the Canada-United States-Mexico Agreement Market Access for Canadian Supply Management. That paragraph basically says that it's undermined supply management, but supply management was part of the negotiations of all of those trade agreements, and I think for us to say that free trade is a bad decision for Canada sets a very bad message. So if that paragraph stays in, I would ask that this go to a vote if we're going to send this or not.
Okay, all happy to take other sentiment. Monsieur Parent.
Oui, j'apprécie les deux.
I do appreciate John's comments. I don't have the same interpretation of that paragraph. It explains that there were concessions in the last trade agreements. It doesn't say that we should never have any trade agreements. Quite the contrary. All it says is that within supply management, those concessions weaken the control of one of the countries, which is whatever is what is being imported. If we remove this, then we remove the explanation of the bill, and we then would not be explaining to the senators what they need to understand this bill. We can move on to vote if you want. For 280, I do think is very important. We did add 282, and there was a general consensus. So I think that we can find a general consensus on this as well. And if we can't find one, let's move on to a vote.
Comments from colleagues? Seeing none, I will uptake your request, Mr. Barlow, to have a vote on, as I understand it, it would be removing the second paragraph of the drafted letter. That's what you're supporting.
We can just vote on whether or not to send the letter.
Okay, understood. Madam Clerk?
Leave the room, Chair.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Monsieur Drouin? En faveur, sinon.
Monsieur Lewis.
Yes.
Madame Brière.
Oui.
Madame Tedderoy.
Oui.
Madame Murray.
Oui.
Monsieur Barlow. Monsieur Epp.
No.
Madame Rude.
No.
Monsieur Stanley.
No.
Monsieur Perron.
Oui.
Monsieur McGregor.
Yes.
Okay. Clearly, it passes. So, colleagues, we will move forward as had been agreed on behalf of the committee. I have nothing else for you. We will be studying on Thursday intergenerational transfer of farm assets. 2 meetings set aside, Thursday and on Tuesday. I unfortunately won't be able to be in the chair, but Mr. Barlow, you'll be in good company with him helping to lead us along. So meeting adjourned, and I will see you next week.